Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, why Leonard Miller made his best case yet for cracking the Timberwolves rotation this year in Game 3 of Summer League. It's all upcoming. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Happy Hump Day. The Timberwolves lost their first Summer League game on Tuesday. I've got some takeaways from that game. We'll talk about especially Leonard Miller and Josh Minott, how impressive they were in the game. And we'll talk a little Daishen Knicks. I may pull out some studs and duds here. We did that, throughout the post-game podcast during the regular season. So we'll hit on some of that here today as well. A couple other, Wolves notes we'll get to as well. So do all that here in a moment. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, you can listen wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also watch on YouTube. You can watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on Roku and Amazon Fire TV as well. And we're still daily here throughout the month of July. Daily throughout July. We'll go to 3 shows a week in August, but plenty to cover here as the Wolves work their way through Summer League. Minnesota entered play on Tuesday, one of 9 teams that was 2-0, but of course they lost only by 2. They'd won their first 2 games, I think, by 9 points apiece, ended up losing by 2 to Philadelphia. And this game overall was, it was a Summer League game. And here's the thing. The first 2 Wolves games in Summer League were actually really entertaining. I enjoyed them. I thought, and a lot of it was because Terrence Shannon was so phenomenal. And, Nadir Haifi was fun to watch. And Daishen Knicks played well. And the Wolves were making shots. And it was free-flowing. And it was like the good version of what you want Summer League to be. Because, of course, it can be really clunky at times. And Tuesday's game against the Sixers, clunky doesn't begin to describe it. It was a clank fest. Just far too many missed shots. The shooting splits for the teams in these games, the Sixers made 35% of their shot attempts. They were 15% outside the arc. They managed to shoot 91% at the line. We'll talk about that too. The free throw shooting there were too many free throws shot. The Wolves weren't much better. 38% for the field and 19% outside the arc. The Wolves made 5 threes in the entire game. Philadelphia made 4 threes in the entire game. Philadelphia 4-26 outside the arc. The Wolves 5 of 26. So each team shot 26. Free throws, though. Well, actually, let's do this. Fouls called in this game. Minnesota committed 37 personal fouls in this game. According to the broadcast on ESPN, the most fouls committed by a single team in the regular season last year was either 34 or 35. It was less than 37. And Summer League games are 8 minutes shorter. They're just 40 minutes long. And Philadelphia committed 30 fouls. So it's not like they weren't foul happy as well. This was, I put this as much on the refs as the players. I mean, you got to just not at some point. I mean, 67 total fouls called in 40 minutes of play. That's too much. The Wolves attempted 31 free throws. The Sixers attempted 44 free throws in a 40-minute game. It was really rough. It was rough to watch. And that also made it so that there was no flow. So there was no obvious, it never really felt like anybody on either team was having that great of a game. I mean, and we'll get into who I think played best for the Wolves. And I talked, Leonard Miller is the headliner here. But the Sixers had Ricky Council, the 4th shot 3 of 15. Jared McCain shot 5 of 16. Jeff Dowden shot 6 of 17. Minott was 6 of 14 for the Wolves. Daishen Knicks was just 4 of 14. But we'll talk more about this. He attempted 15 free throws. Knicks did. Dillingham again struggled from the field, 3 of 10. But Leonard Miller was the bright spot. He was the only guy in either team that shot any volume, and certainly anywhere actually, he was the only player that attempted 7 or more shots from either team that sniffed 50%. And he was 10 of 20 from the field in this game. He was 1 of 5 on threes. That means he was 9 of 15 on 2-point attempts. Now, a lot of it was at the rim. He had 8 offensive rebounds, 6 of them in the first half for Leonard Miller. He finished with 22 points and 13 rebounds. And it was an interesting performance because at times I felt like the Wolves front court was kind of overwhelmed by the Sixers, and specifically by Adam Bona, like was really, really impressive in the paint. And like his line was 10 and 9. He only had 1 block. So it doesn't look that great, but I thought he was physical, gave the Wolves some problems inside. And on the one hand, that's one of the concerns with Leonard Miller is is he physical enough? Is he big/physical enough to play the 5 at the NBA level and even play the 4 and end up down low against anybody in the NBA with consistency on a nightly basis? And at times I think, especially defensively, he struggled. But on the glass in this game, 13 total rebounds, 8 of them offensive, 5 defensive. And he really is what kept the Wolves in the game in the first half. And Minnesota ended up getting down by 16 before coming all the way back to tie the game down the stretch and then ultimately losing by a bucket. But Leonard Miller was the reason that the Wolves were in this game at halftime, because as the defense was a little spotty, but the activity on the offensive glass and the ability to just kind of play volleyball with himself down low with an offensive rebound and eventually score. Shockingly, he only had 2 free throw attempts in a game where the Wolves shot 31. The teams combined shot 75 free throws. Leonard Miller attempted 20 shots from the floor, more than anybody else in this game for either team, and only had 2 free throw attempts. But he was fantastic. 22 and 13 for Leonard Miller. Again, 10 and 20 from the field, 1 of 5 from 3, which is an area that he's got to, like, we know he can shoot the 3. He's got to shore that up. He's got to be more consistent from out there. And if he could be league average or better, that goes a long way toward him playing rotation minutes for the Wolves this year. 1 steal, 1 assist, 2 blocks in this game for Leonard Miller. He only had 2 turnovers, and he had the ball in his hands a fair amount. Now, it wasn't a lot on the perimeter. A lot of it was, getting those offensive rebounds and trying to get putbacks. So it's not like he was doing a ton with the ball in his hands, trying to create for others. We've talked before about what his potential role would be, and just to put a bow in his performance in this game and the context that I mentioned off the top, like this is exactly the type of game the Wolves want to see. The activity level. I mentioned that on the offensive glass, but I would even say, even if in the half court, he struggled at times with the physicality and a little bit on the glass defensively, he blocked 2 shots in this game. One was a great chase down block that was purely effort. It was in transition. It was a second effort by the player on the Sixers. And they had like gathered and pump faked a Wolves defender past them. And Leonard Miller came out of nowhere to block the shot. And it's those types of effort plays, the second chance points and opportunities generated on offense, that are going to give Leonard Miller a shot at a rotation spot. Now, the Wolves' top 8 rotation spots are set. It's 7 of the top 8 from last year. Of course, the bench players being Naz Reid and Nickeil Alexander-Walker with the starting 5. And your 8th players, Rob Dillingham or Joe Ingles, and your 9th player is Rob Dillingham. So like Ingles and Dillingham are your next 2. So that's 9 guys. Some regular season games, you're going to play 10. And some nights you might only play 9, but a lot of nights you'll play 10. And some nights that 10th guy has to play more if there's foul trouble or whatever. And I've said before, I think Leonard Miller, Josh Minott, and Terrence Shannon Jr. are all going to battle for those minutes. Miller's probably on the outside looking in among those 3, but he was the Wolves' best player on the floor in this game. I mean, you could argue Daishen Nix, but I just think Nix, we'll talk about this in a minute. There's just too many. He makes too many mistakes. And Leonard Miller, like, I know he has the skill set to play point forward, but the Wolves are never in a regular season game going to be like, hey, Leonard, go run the offense. That's not what this is going to be. Leonard Miller is going to be the effort guy. He's going to be hey, if the ball swings to you, pump fake and dunk on somebody or make a 3 or be active on the offensive glass. Use your length and athleticism and nose for the ball, which are all things he has. So this was a compelling case that Leonard Miller made. And if he does it again, at some point in the final couple games in Las Vegas, like that'll be something that sticks with the Timberwolves coaching staff headed into training camp in the fall is, hey, can this guy can he have this activity level frequently? And if so, that makes him a rotation guy. It really might do that. Okay. I want to talk about Daishen Nix. I want to talk about Josh Minott. We'll also talk about the other guys, the other starters, right? Terrence Shannon, Rob Dillingham, and, kind of go, I don't know, this is going to really be studs and duds because I got a lot to say about all these guys. So Let's go with Knicks and Minott here next, and we'll talk about what they looked like in their third summer league game. All that is upcoming here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our title sponsors of the show, and that's Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. You could buy really any tickets, not just MLB. I mean, MLB's back later this week. It's on All-Star break now. The All-Star game is Tuesday night. And like the Twins are back home, I believe Friday is when they're back at Target Field. You can get your tickets to Twins games on Game Time. You get your tickets to concerts, to comedy, to theater, whatever you like to attend, you can find it there. They also have all-in pricing on the site, which is awesome. You can toggle it on to show you the total up front, so you're not surprised by any fees at checkout. You can also get a panoramic view from your seat for whichever event you're buying for in the app before you buy. It's awesome. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets or tickets to any of the above, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDON NBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Do you watch Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day long? If so, no doubt you have to turn down the volume because of all the shouting. Instead, make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right. Daishen was probably the second best all-around player for the Wolves in game 3 of the Summer League. And the line, if you just kind of, it's funny. It's one of those where if you didn't watch the game, you look at the box score, and if you're only like really casually box score watching, you'd be like, 22, 7, and 5. Great game for Daishen. But if you look at the field goal shooting, you look at 4 for 14 and 1 of 5 on 3, and you'd be like, wait a minute, this is a super inefficient performance if you covered up, the actual points, rebounds, assists. But the free throw shooting is what absolutely set this thing apart. He had 15 free throw attempts, 15 of the Timberwolves' 31. So basically half of their free throw attempts as a team were by Daishen, and nobody on the Sixers, despite the Sixers shooting 44 free throws in the game, nobody on Philly shot more than 9. But Daishen got to the line 15 times in this game. And the 22, 7, and 5 line is legit. Like, he was everywhere. He was active. He was involved in virtually every play. He only turned it over 3 times for as much as the ball was in his hands in this game. And it's really funny. Like, at times he looks the part of a legit NBA rotation guy, but then at other times it's like, I don't know, he's just chucking the ball at the rim, or he's just putting his head down and running guys over. He's being handsy on defense. He ended up with 6 personal fouls called in 35 minutes. This is your daily reminder that players are allowed to foul up to 10 times before being disqualified in Las Vegas Summer League. So, I mean, like, he's never going to play 35 minutes. And if he plays 35 minutes for a game for the Wolves this year in the regular season, something's gone horribly wrong. But there certainly is some upside to just how savvy he is with the ball in his hands. There is still, and I said this, well, I don't know. I think I'm still trying to put my finger on who his game reminds me of. But there's something about his high volume scoring, and maybe it's because he plays so hard on both ends of the floor, and the passion he plays with and how much he talks. And obviously he was a big part of the Timberwolves bench vibes last year with the pointing and the whole thing with that. So, like, the Wolves really like him. They like big-bodied guards, and the dude has a knack to score. I think the defense has clearly improved, and he spoke a little bit after the game to the media about picking that up from watching Alexander Walker, Jaden, guys like that on the perimeter last year, Mike Conley, who play with that intensity. And when he was a rotation guy for the Rockets for a couple seasons after playing with G League Ignite, he was a poor defensive player. And that was one of the reasons I was less than thrilled when the Timberwolves signed him last year. But clearly he's worked on that. And the high volume, low efficiency scoring is still what Daishen is offensively, but the defense has to respect that he can do anything to them at any point in time. He's a pretty well-rounded offensive player. He just doesn't make his shots enough. And in this game, I thought the shot selection wasn't awful other than a handful of possessions. There were a couple bad turnovers mixed in, but by and large, like, he looked the part of an NBA player in this game. One of the few kind of adults in the room on the floor so far in the summer league. And granted, he spent a year with G League Ignite, didn't play college ball, a year with G League Ignite, and 2 years with the Rockets, and then last year on a 2-way with the Wolves. So he's got as much or more professional experience as virtually anybody else in Vegas Summer League. So that's to be expected. Like, he should look like the adult in the room, which is so funny because he wasn't that at all for the Wolves last year. But yeah, I mean, like, this was another solid Daishen game, and he's probably been, I mean, like, given how, how much the ball's been in his hands, and I think the effort he's put forth defensively, I think you'd probably argue he's their best, or at least most effective, most valuable player, if you will, through 3 summer league games. Terrence Shannon maybe had the peak. Minott's been consistent. We'll talk about him in a minute. Miller's had a couple really nice moments. Dillingham's had some moments. Jalen Clark had the monster game too. But overall, you'd probably have to say that Daishen has contributed the most to them, winning the first 2 games by multiple possessions, and coming down to the last possession in this game with a chance to win was a big part of the comeback from 16 points down in this game against the Sixers. So a really nice game for Daishen. Josh Minott, 18 points, 6 rebounds, 6 of 14 shooting. He was just 1 of 6 outside the arc. So we've talked about 3 guys so far. Miller was 1 of 5. Daishen was 1 of 5, and Minott was 1 of 6. He was 6 for 14, 5 of 6 at the free throw line. I really enjoyed Josh Minott's aggressiveness trying to get to the basket in this game. Yes, he shot 6 threes, but he also shot 8 twos, and he got to the line for 6 free throw attempts, 6 rebounds, 2 offensive rebounds, 1 steal, 1 block, only 1 turnover. And I continue to be impressed by Minott looking to pass the ball, I should say. I got on him a little bit. I think it was the first game that he had 1 or 2 really nice passes, and then he had a couple that he forced. And it was clear that he was predetermining, like, okay, I'm going to get the ball, and this is where I'm going to go with it because this is the right play. And it's great that he's thinking that far ahead. And this game had another couple similar plays where sometimes it works out great, and it's like, oh man, he really saw that develop ahead of time, which is not something you would have seen last year or the year before, where he was a get the ball and go, get the ball and shoot it. And that's still happening some of the time, but like, he's processing things quicker and making decisions where to go to the ball, where he could go with the ball. He's not always making the right choice, and sometimes it's far too predetermined to the point where the defense can see it. But he had a really nice kind of dump down pass. He had the ball at maybe like 8 feet from the rim, and he started to go up and then dumped it down. I forget who the player on the receiving end was, but to somebody for a layup or a dunk. And it's those plays, or at least I think they missed the shot actually, but it was the right play. Those plays are impressive to me. And I said this the other day, I forget if it was Monday or Tuesday's show. Like, I don't know how many situations Josh Minott is going to be in his NBA career, at least this year, anytime soon, where he's going to be asked to like facilitate and create. But everybody needs to know what the right basketball play is. And if Minott's only a pump fake and go guy, then teams aren't going to respect the 3-point shot. They're going to give him space. If he's only letting it fly from 3, I mean, if he's shooting it like he has so far as a pro, they're going to let him do that. But, then teams they have to also be able to respect your ability to pass the ball. And up until the summer league, I don't think that anybody thought Josh Minott would have the skills or the wherewithal to catch the ball and make the right pass, or to drive and drop it off to somebody else, or to drive and kick it out. And we're seeing glimmers of that being a possibility. And it's okay for him to make some of these mistakes of aggression in summer league when he's trying to make the right basketball play, and he's just maybe a little bit overzealous or again, predetermining what he's trying to do. But for the most part, I've been very encouraged. And the 18-6 was a nice performance. 18 on 14 shots. Like, we'll take that. If he's going to go 1 of 6 outside the arc, you can kind of remedy that by getting to the line 6 times and making your free throws. And he did that, 5 of 6 at the line. So another really nice name for Minott. And game, I should say, for Minott. He was really good defensively in this one too. I thought it was his best defensive game of the summer league so far. 1 steal, 1 block, doesn't pop on the stat sheet defensively, but I thought he was in the right place at the right time and provided really good help defense once again in this one. So good game overall for Josh Minott. Those are the three best players on the floor. So effectively, I'm doing the studs and duds thing, just kind of spread it out a little bit. Miller, Nix, Minott, probably in that order, were the best players on the floor for Minnesota. Let's talk about the two rookies, the first round picks for this year, Terrence Shannon and Rob Dillingham next. We'll also talk about Jalen Clark, Jesse Edwards, and Nadir Haifi, all of who really did less this time around than they did last game. So we'll talk about all those guys here next and put a bow on today's show. All right. So to this point in Summer League, Rob Dillingham has probably been the disappointing sounds so harsh. And I defended him on Monday and Tuesday shows because I think the process has mostly been good. He struggled the most with the process in this game. And I don't even think it was the process. I still think it was really the execution. He had 7 turnovers, and contrasting that with 7 assists, not great. He again struggled from the field, just 3 of 10. And so many of his turnovers were, I would be willing to bet at least 3, maybe 4 of his turnovers were fast break situations and not in the half court. Actually, probably more than that, at least 4 of his 7 turnovers. And they were mistakes, similar to what I said about Josh Minott, mistakes of aggression. And Dillingham was brought to Minnesota to push the pace, to play fast, to force the issue, to use his quickness to get the Wolves out in transition. That's clearly the mandate. That's also just how he played at Kentucky. And he's doing that. In this game, Philadelphia was aggressive. They were expecting it. They were jumping passing lanes. They were trying to pick his pocket. The ball pressure was incredible. It was the best on-ball pressure we've seen in the Summer League for a Wolves opponent. And they sped him up a little bit. And that's why he turned it over 7 times. The 3 of 10 shooting, I actually thought with the ball in his hands in the half court, Dillingham had 3 or 4 really impressive moves where there was a floater that rattled in and out. There were a couple of layups, actually like 3 layups that rimmed out. He had one at the very end of the game that was maybe the best individual move I've seen from him offensively in Summer League, and I think he missed the layup. It was on the right side of the basket in front of the Sixers bench in the second half. And but it was a really nice step through. Like the process is there, the moves are there, the shot selection was fine. The shots just rattled out. And Dillingham had, granted, 1 season, but a long season, a long track record of shooting the basketball much better at Kentucky. So I said this the other day, Rob Dillingham's Summer League shooting percentage is the last thing anyone should be worried about. He didn't go 15 like a certain top draft pick did as well. I don't want to pile on. That's not nice. But he didn't. Like Dillingham shooting the ball, not great, but we all know he could do it. He did it at Kentucky. It's not going to be an issue. Is the process there? And so far, the answer is yes. He got goaded into some of these turnovers, and that's not great. But 6 rebounds in 33 minutes for a dude that's like maybe 6'1" and 165-ish pounds. There were a couple really impressive rebounds where he elevated and snatched the ball away. That was good to see. So, again, nose for the ball, process, pushing pace, and some nice moves offensively, I think was all fine for Rob Dillingham. Not alarming. The shots are going to fall. Terrence Shannon was just less involved in this game, and I don't necessarily think it was his fault. He just had the ball in his hands less often. He had 9 points. He was only 3 of 5 shooting, attempted just 2 threes, and which was I said Minott attempted 6, Miller and Nix each attempted 5. Terrence Shannon only 2 3-point attempts, 9 points on 5 shots, 2 assists, 4 rebounds. He also turned it over 4 times. I thought he was fine in this game. Nothing really stuck out. It was surprising to me how quiet he was. He did have a couple of really nice plays also, especially defensively. I think I've been impressed with his defense. We talked with Locked On Illini last week on the show, and with Sonny from Locked On Illini, and I was concerned a little bit about the steal rate dipping when he went from Texas Tech to Illinois, and there were some scouting reports that suggested the defense wasn't consistent. And Sonny said, hey, look, it's more about he was also the guy offensively and being asked to guard the best defensive player. So it was a fatigue thing, as well as he was just guarding the best defensive player and was a focal point on both ends of the floor for the opponent. So, and he thought Shannon would be just fine at the NBA level defensively. And he's so far been very impressive in Summer League on the ball defensively. Jalen Clark in game 2 on Sunday was awesome. He had 6 steals. He looked comfortable offensively. I suggested on Tuesday's show that I thought there was a chance he'd maybe play less the rest of the summer league to make sure they don't overwork him after the Achilles surgery in his first live action in 16 months. I think that might have partly been what happened here. He only played 13 minutes, and he was 0 of 3 shooting. He did have 1 steal. He committed 4 fouls in 13 minutes. He was also a minus 15 for whatever that's worth. I don't know that this was performance-based because he was so good last game. I think it was just – my take is they don't want to overwork him. That's my guess. I could be wrong. We'll see how much he plays on Thursday. But Jalen Clark only played 13 minutes, and it was disappointing because I was excited to watch him play a little bit more. Nadir Haifi reportedly left a little bit early. He didn't play like the latter half of the fourth quarter, and John Krasinski of The Athletic reported that it was a family emergency that he left for. So hopefully everything's okay with Nadir. And, obviously too soon. Who knows if he's back for Thursday's game. But I thought he looked pretty good. It was his worst game of the 3 to this point. 2 of 6 shooting, 0 of 4 outside the arc. He did have a couple really nice jumpers mixed in. The defensive tenacity is still there. He had 3 turnovers in 13 minutes. I still think he looks the part right now. I think his birthday, he turned 22 in the last couple of days. I think he kind of sort of looks the part of an NBA backup point guard. The Wolves don't have a roster spot, though, unless they get rid of a two-way guy or fill their last roster spot. They do have a roster spot, but I'd be shocked if they gave it to Nadir Haifi. So we'll see. Jesse Edwards, two-way big. Speaking of two-way players, he had 7 personal fouls, not 7 points. He had 2 points. I'm not used to seeing a 7 in the personal foul column. 2 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, and a block. However, he committed 7 fouls in 13 minutes, and he turned it over 3 times. Shot 1 of 5. This was also his worst game of the summer league so far. This is the first time he looked just out of position. I lauded him for his positioning in the first 2 games. I specifically said on Tuesday's show that I was maybe most impressed with his verticality defensively, beating guys to the spot. That didn't happen in this game. He looked a full step slow, and was not as effective on the glass as you'd want him to be. So not a great game for Jesse Edwards, but it's 1 game. And let's see, is that it? I mean, I don't really have anything else to say. Joe Wieskamp, former Iowa Hawkeye, played in game 1 briefly. I don't think he played in game 2. Played 3 minutes at the start of the fourth quarter in this game. Missed his only 3-point attempt. Did get an and one, but missed the free throw. And then Jaden Ledee, I think it's Jaden Ledee from San Diego State. I was excited to watch him a little bit, and he's gotten very little run and hasn't really stuck out. He only played 2.5 minutes in this game, but he's the only other rotation guy that played, or the only other guy that played, period, for the Wolves in this game. So disappointing loss, a real free throw fest. And again, that was on the players and on the refs. Hopefully we don't have to sit through something like that in game 4 of Summer League. The Wolves are almost certainly now not going to advance to the semifinals. They play Thursday, then they'll have 1 more game added to their schedule after that, which I believe would be over the weekend then. So we'll be back Thursday. I have one more thing, actually. PJ Dozier officially, after a couple weeks after it was reported the Wolves had agreed to a minimum deal, that there was somebody reporting, it wasn't Krasinski, it was somebody else reporting that it was a partially guaranteed contract. And that is official now. The Timberwolves, well, I should say the deal is official. John Krasinski is now reporting that it's a partially guaranteed minimum salary contract. So we'll see. It gives them a little bit of flexibility if they say make a 2-for-1 or a 1-for-2 trade, or if somebody else comes free that they really want to sign, or if they have an injury and they need to adjust what the bench looks like in terms of their depth at different positions and roster balance a little bit. They have a little bit of flexibility there without being out a ton of cash. So that is now official, though. I was talking just a minute ago about they're not going to sign Nadir Haifi because they only have 1 spot left. They're not going to sign him with their final spot. If they fell in love with him or anybody else after Summer League, they could theoretically add somebody and then waive Dozier later if they want to free up a spot. Clearly, Tim Conley likes having that empty roster spot to play with at the end of the roster throughout the regular season. So anyway, we'll be back on Thursday. Of course, the Wolves play again Thursday. We'll have shows Thursday, Friday, and then we'll be back again Monday Show posting times are going to be a little bit different over the next few days. There's going to be I'm going to have some travel built in there. So, make sure you're following and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. You'll be notified when the posts go live. And of course, on YouTube as well, you can watch the show. You can also follow on you can follow on X at Locked On T-Wolves and also at Beecken. You can watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. Otherwise, that's all we have for you today. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.